Hugh Barnett. How old am I now? I'm just a young 102. 1976, I believe. In Lehigh, Pennsylvania. We were an evening club. And it soon turned into a happy hour club. Well, I moved from Lehigh to Clarksville, Tennessee, and joined the club there. And I lived in Clarksville for approximately 30 years. I was a Rotarian the whole time I was there, president of the club one time. And then I moved here in 2008, joined the club here in Maryville. I get to Rotary and I make friends. I don't like to leave friends. Secondly, I approve of their programs and participate in their programs. But friendship is probably the main reason. Yearly, there has to be an occasion if I would miss.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Miss. It's true. We're adding up how many meetings you probably have attended.
How many meetings have I?
2,200.
2,200? Gosh.
43 years. There should be a pin for that.
That's a lot of meetings. And these are plaques I have made in Rotary.
Impressive. Impressive.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, it's impressive.
I don't know. No, there's the fellow. Badge or something. No. Who asked you to join Rotary?
Beg your pardon?
Who asked you to join Rotary?
Oh, there was a gentleman that I had met in Pennsylvania that was a Rotarian, and I forgot my association with him. It seemed to me about once a week I was associated with him, and he asked me what I'd like to join. My daddy had been a Rotarian, so I was interested in it. I said, yeah. But the Rotary Club up there was an evening club, 6 o'clock done. A lot of them came at 5 o'clock because it was in the American Legion hut. It was a restaurant. It had the best bar in town. I remember one time I was late. I couldn't at work, and there was quite the happy hour had been going on for a long time. And when I finally got there, why, there was a martini already at my place. Another time I was late, came in, and the club, they had rented a lady to play the piano. They sang songs before the meeting. And when I got there, standing in the door, they were singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And I stopped. When they stopped, everybody looked at me and I said, I want equal times. I want to play Dixie.
Tell us about your father's Rotarian experience. Had he been a Rotarian for long?
My father was a doctor, a medical doctor, and there was a noon club. He was a Rotarian for several years, but it's finally sort of interfered with his practice. And but he was very proud to be a Rotarian.
This was in Mississippi?
Yes. Let's see what year that would have been. 28 and 29. I guess so. I don't remember a whole lot about him being Rotary. But I knew that. I remember one time he talked about Paul Harris. He was still alive at that time. But
rural Mississippi.
he had good friends who were Rotarians. But I don't think he was a Rotarian over about 3 years.
We're the Boy Scouts of America, scouting for things unknown. Our activities lead to...
We're all Eagle Scouts from Mississippi. This is me right here. This is President Hoover. This is the Rose Garden. And we were invited to the White House by the President. It just so happened that I was able to be right next to him. I didn't get to talk to him. He was talking to these people. But it was nice to listen to him talk and to have been to the position. But they're all Eagle Scouts.
How did you get there?
A school bus from Mississippi.
How long did it take you?
This right here is the original diary that I wrote in here every day of what happened and where we were. I haven't looked at it in 15 years. But
What year was it?
1931.
we
August
back
25th.
in 1931,
31.
some of the roads wasn't too good. We had bus trouble. We sat on the side of the road all one afternoon while a wrecker came to fix the truck. But it was good fellowship. I knew most of them anyway, and we had a real good time.
How old were you?
I was the youngest Eagle Scout in the council. I think I was 14. I was the youngest in the council.
Wow. Was there something special you did to earn an Eagle Scout?
Well, it's quite an ordeal to get all the merit badges and get recommendations and all that kind of thing. It ain't easy.
Right.
hmm
So what was your main project?
Well, we built a log cabin and spent a lot of time at the log cabin out in the woods. We had a lake out there we could swim. I did my practice swimming there for a life-saving badge. Camping badge, I could use at times out there, camping badge. That project helped me get to be an Eagle Scout.
Wow,
Okay.
that's interesting. Very cool. Is this your dad?
This is my father, and that's Shirley.
Tell Greg about Shirley. Tell him how you met Shirley.
When I got to Connecticut, I was with Remington Arms Company in the engineering department, and they got the young engineers, got them rooms in homes in the nice part of town. And the home I was in, Shirley's home was back to back on the next block. And Shirley's mother would see me going to work every day, and she went over next door to our neighbor and says, you have a nice young man staying with you? She says, yes, he's from Mississippi, and he tells me he's in the engineering department at Remington Arms Company. So a couple of days later, I was in my room, and the landlady says, the neighbor wants to talk to you. And I got down and introduced myself. She says, would you like to meet my daughter? Yeah, certainly would. But she had shown, Shirley was a receptionist at a machine tool company, and she was late. That afternoon, Shirley's mother phoned her and says, would you like to meet a boy from Mississippi? Shirley says, heavens no. So when Shirley was late getting home, Shirley's mother went over and says, would you like to meet my daughter? Yes. And we went over there, and Shirley was in the dining room having a late dinner with a newspaper propped up on a glass. And she introduced me, and after she finished, why, we went down in the basement in the game room, and she says, you like to play some ping pong? I said, well, certainly. I thought I'd show her a lesson. She beat the stuffings out of me. She was good. And then she put a record on the record player. She was a good dancer. And after a few pieces, I tried to kiss her. The very idea pushed me away. She didn't much. She made it plain that no kisses. And when I got ready to go, I says, may I come back tomorrow night? She says, yes. By that time, why, things had cooled off. And we went down again, and she let me beat her at ping pong. It was pretty obvious. And then we danced, and I kissed her. So went on, and we married, and had my mother come up from Mississippi, and we rented a little house in Westport, Connecticut, and we lived there until we moved to Oak Ridge. Interesting experience.
How long were you married?
Well, that was in 1942, and she passed away in 2011. Naturally, long time. Zeus.
Tell him about your children
Sure, how many children?
and
Two
grandchildren.
boys,
And grandchildren.
3 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren. Yeah. All of them are wonderful.
Experience in Oak Ridge.
In the Manhattan Project, I started in the Manhattan Project in 1943 in New York City, where they were designing the K-25 plant. I was assigned to the maintenance. I had top secret clearance at that time because the previous job I was on got me top secret clearance. So when the first day there, why, they gave me 2 books to read. One about nuclear physics, explaining what they were trying to do, make an atomic bomb, all about uranium isotopes and all of that, it's critical mass. So I studied all that. The second book was the theoretical design of the plant that I was going to work in. I was assigned to the superintendent of maintenance to help organize and develop a maintenance department for the plant. And you see, the plant was going to have up to 7,000 employees, and a good 2,000 of them would be in maintenance department. I visited the various plants where they were making the equipment, so I'd be familiar with it. I went to Detroit where they were making the converters. That's the equipment that separates the uranium isotope. I went to Alice Chalmers where they were making the compressors of various sizes. Went to Chicago to train to big valves and small valves were a big problem. I went to train to learn about the. Then when I went to Oak Ridge, I worked up the organization chart for maintenance for the plant, and it was used to my surprise. And then my job was to hire people for maintenance department. I interviewed people to be supervisors, craftsmen, and it was an interesting time because talking and interviewing so many people, you really got a good prospect of people. I couldn't discuss, tell them what the plant was going to do or anything like that. I just says it's a good war effort plant, and we hired a lot of people. Then when we went into production in January of 1945, supplying low assay uranium to the WWII plant. Now, WWII was supposed to make low assay, but they didn't have the capacity. Most of the big problem was to get it up to from 0.7% up to around 4 to 5%. Then with the calutrons, Y12 could take it the rest of the way to weapons grade. And for a while I was in the engineering department, in charge of the planning department. I was more or less overseeing construction that was going on. Not by the main contractor of construction, but some in the side projects. Then I became division head of maintenance department. I had over 1,000 people in my organization. And we had some major problems that I oversaw and supervised. One was when TVA shut the plant down for 10 days. Nearly 3 weeks we were able to supply Y12. What they did, they opened the floodgates at Norris Dam, let all the trash go down the Clinch River. This trash went into suction for turbines, shut down all the turbines. The plants had no electricity. It destroyed some of the equipment and the filter system for the turbines, and you couldn't buy. Everything was made special. So I had to got my design department to design a big sprocket 10 feet in diameter, spokes in it, put in there to turn the screen to stop the trash from going in. That took us about 10 days. Then so much of the being down that way took a lot of maintenance to get the plant back in operation. But what we did was part of the atom bomb, the first atom bomb, used our material. So that wasn't the end of it, because I guess we're in a race with Russia during the Cold War, and we had major problems that we had to do with our own maintenance department because it was a secret plant. We couldn't have people running in and out of the plant. And I was division head of maintenance. Well, Y12 was shut down September of '45, and what K-25 made all the uranium, enriched uranium, and things. And then in 1960s, well, I stayed in there as in charge of mechanical maintenance until I left, until Union Carbide transferred me to one of their own plants. But it was an interesting experience going through all of that, having to keep your mouth shut.
How many people knew?
Huh?
How many people knew what they were doing?
Well, when the war ended, there were 7,000 people in the K-25 employees, and at that particular time I only had 1,000, but it grew after the war.
How many people knew what they were doing?
probably 100.
New? They knew
I've
what they
never,
were doing?
maybe not that many,
Wow.
but
They couldn't do that today.
uh,
Was it hard to keep a secret?
no, you got used to it.
Yeah. Couldn't do that today.
Huh?
Couldn't do that today.
No. I guess it's, let's see. We had carpools to drive back and forth.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't, although I had a company car assigned to me, I couldn't take it home. And in our carpool, there was 4 of us. All of us had top secret clearance. And it was interesting back and forth to talk about how we were and problems that we had and what the assay was of the material we were making. And so it was interesting experience. And naturally, I soaked up a lot of radiation. I've had cancer 3 times, all different cancer each time, requiring an operation to remove it, each one. But now I'm in good shape.
Amazing.
Ask him if
What?
President Roosevelt ever came there.
Did President Roosevelt ever visit?
No,
Never?
no.
No.
Neither did Truman.
Interesting.
Neither one visited while I was there.
Tell him about the day you found out the war was over.
The day that what?
The war was over.
Oh! Shirley and myself had been invited out to dinner at a neighbor's house. And she was about 9 months pregnant. And while we were having dinner, she had a little pain, so she asked the hostess, "Do you have any aspirins?" She was going in labor, didn't know it. And she got on aspirin. She took an aspirin. It didn't do any good. Then it soon dawned on her, we better get her to the hospital. And when we got her to the hospital, she went directly to the delivery area. I think I went into the waiting room. I think Lee was born within 30 minutes after they got to the hospital. And I hadn't seen Shirley at that time. I was in the waiting room, and I heard a lot of horns blowing and a lot of commotion outside, and people driving down the streets with their horns blowing. So I said, "What in the world's wrong?" So I went downstairs and turned on my car radio, and the announcer says, "President Truman has just announced the war is over. Japan has surrendered." I thought they were screaming my newborn son. Well, I went in and saw Shirley and got to see the baby. Then I went up to the plant superintendent, K-25 plant, his home, and there's a few people gathering there celebrating. We drank all this whiskey. And I got on the telephone, phoned my mother to tell her she was a grandmother. I didn't ever offer to pay for it. We were celebrating. So there were interesting times.
Do you feel like your involvement in that helped end the war?
Say that again.
Even though you weren't a veteran, do you
Huh?
feel like, even though you weren't a military veteran, do you feel like the work you did helped to end the war?
It did end the war.
It did end the war.
It saved 2 million lives. They estimate if we had to invade Japan, there'd be 1 million lives on both sides. So I feel instead of saying, look at all the people you killed, I try to push that aside and say, look at all the people we saved. Yeah.
Good deal. How did you get the job at Oak Ridge from Connecticut? How did that happen? Well, you
Well,
were actually even in New York. So,
Well, see,
'cause he was
the Manhattan Project was looking for engineers, and they contacted the ordnance department because they were shutting down some of the ordnance plants, and they got approval. The Manhattan Project got approval to interview me from the ordnance department, and I was interviewed, and the fellow says, how would you like to go to Tennessee? I says, that'd be nice. What doing? He said, I can't tell you. And that was, I wouldn't mind coming. She says, I was already aware of Stanford making the plutonium because that was a DuPont organization, and Remington was a DuPont, and they were hunting for engineers too. And so I already belonged working for DuPont, so I had a choice to either go to Hanford or Oak Ridge, and I chose Oak Ridge. And then I was in New York, Manhattan Project Office for about 3 months before I moved to Oak Ridge. During that time, I was learning as much as I could about what was going on.